Today, I'll be talking about accounting for materials. Now, normally, when we talk about accounting for materials, what comes into mind is the journal entry. Okay, and when we talk about journal entries for materials, normally we only have two groups, no, or two kinds of entries: entries to record the purchases and entries to record the issuance. Now, when we talk about entries to record purchases, normally you have your debit to raw materials or stores, no? Raw materials or stores, okay? And then you have a credit to accounts payable or vouchers payable, okay? Or credit to cash if they are paid in cash. Normally, our purchases, okay, for materials, ayan, okay, will include your direct and indirect materials, okay, because for materials sometimes they may become as a major component of one product and a minor component of a different product, kaya normally we just put the direct and indirect materials into one account, and that is your stores account or raw materials, okay. Also, upon issuance, okay, you will have the following journal entry. For direct materials, you will have a debit to your work in process, no? And for indirect materials, you will have a debit to factory overhead, and that is for the actual, right? And you now have a credit to your raw materials. This one is for the direct materials. This one is for your indirect materials. Now, at the end of the period, okay, oops, mali. Murahin natin yan. At the end of the period, okay, your indirect materials together with other factory overhead cost will be debited to work in process for the applied or allocated amount. Okay, so these are the journal entries for direct materials. Wait lang. So, ayun, gumana na. Okay, so, let's continue. Now, aside from the journal entries, okay, there are also other procedures, no, that happens in between, no, purchasing and issuance. Actually, before purchasing pa lang, may mga other procedures na kailangan nating i-consider. And normally, they are not shown in the journal entry. Okay, one of which is your materials control, no. Now, when we say control, okay, this is most of the time, no, referring to processes that minimizes the risk attached to an asset. Okay, so ayun. And one of the things that you have to remember is that the cost of raw materials is a major part in the total manufacturing cost of each product. Okay, so this one is a major part, and because of that, we have to consider the risks involved, no, okay, in our materials. Kaya there should be rigid controls over raw materials, okay? They are necessary not only to guard against theft but also to minimize waste and misuse from causes such as maintenance of excessive inventories, overissuance, deterioration, spoilage, and obsolescence of materials. Okay, now what are the requirements, okay, for materials control so that they will be effective? Okay, so these are as follows. Number one, okay, we want our materials to be available. Ayan. Not just the materials, but the desired quality of our materials should be available when needed. Okay, aside from that, okay, not just the quality but also the quantity and type of materials must be on hand at the right time of production to proceed on schedule. So, in short, you want the right materials, okay, the right quality, the right quantity, and the correct type at the time when they are needed. Aside from that, no, the cost is also considered. So, the materials must be purchased at the most favorable price. Now, it doesn't mean that we buy the cheapest, no. Take note, okay, not because it's cheap, okay, it's already the best type of material sometimes. Kaya siya cheap. Or let's not use the term cheap, let's just use the term affordable. Ayan, affordable nga siya, but it's the wrong quality. So, there's a trade-off, no? Aside from that, ito na, materials must be protected from loss or theft. Okay. Oh, that's self-explanatory. Also, spoilage and obsolescence. Anong pinagkaibahan nito? Obsolescence, when it's no longer needed, no? The value is decreased due to the passage of time. Okay. Spoilage naman, okay, nag-expire. O, ayan. Or, nasira. Ayan. Cost of materials handling and storage must be kept to a minimum. Okay, so ayan. Although they are not the cost of inventory, but they are still inventoriable. Huh, ano ibig sabihin nun? Okay? Normally, when we talk about the cost of inventory, kasi, okay, what we understand is that we are just referring to the acquisition cost. But the real cost of inventory, okay, will include other inventoriable cost. When we say inventoriable cost, they may not be the purchase price, but they increase the value of the inventory. Okay, and the best example are your handling and storage costs. Ayan. Okay, so there you go for materials control. Ayan. For inventory controls, what are these? Okay, we have to take into consideration that the controls, okay, or policies and procedures, no, to protect or safeguard your inventory differs, no, from one company to another. So it really depends on the size, the nature of operation, and of course the type of goods or the type of inventories. Okay, not only that, no, okay, the cost of the controls are also considered. Basic features, well, number one, okay, we have the physical controls. Okay, physical safeguards for receiving, storing, and issuing materials. Okay, also there are formal procedures for ordering and paying for materials. And aside from that, normally we expect, no, the use of perpetual inventory system to provide an ongoing record for the quantity, not just for the quality, but most of the time quantity and value of each type of materials received and issued, and the balance on hand. Now take note, okay, these are just some, and you're not limited to these types of features. And you can, you can ignore some of these features, no, depending on the type of inventory and the cost involved, no. Dito hindi mawawala yung cost benefit analysis. There's always a trade-off ba kung tawagin, no, na basically you want lower cost but you want higher benefits, but most of the time, okay, these benefits, no, comes with a cost. So when it comes to control procedures, no, the benefits should justify the cost, no. For example, we're safeguarding a set of inventory with a cost of, let's say, 500 pesos. But then the cost of the controls, no, to safeguard these inventories will reach up to 10,000 pesos. Mas mahal pa yung control kaysa dun sa inventory or the assets that we are trying to protect. So, in this case, pwede mo siguro i-ignore yung type of control na yun. Okay? Anyway, more discussion on asset controls and procedures when we go to auditing theory. Okay, organization for control. And control is achieved as a part, no, in part through an organizational structure that allows specialization at the same time, okay, that it defines authority, fixes responsibility, and provides a system of, ito yung pinaka-importante siguro, checks and balance. Okay, so to summarize, okay, you should have an organizational structure, okay, which allows check and balance, no, in our assets. Ayan. The main objective is to secure the advantages of specialization and know-how. Ayan. The functions related to materials acquisition and use are usually subdivided into the following departments. Paano yun eh? 4 yun eh. But in the book of Guerrero, no, yung author ng textbook natin, 5 yung sinite niya doon. And the most important will be these three. It starts with these three, no? The purchasing department is the one in charge in purchasing, no? Ibig sabihin, from placing an order, of course, before you place an order, there should be an authorization muna. Ayan. And we expect that they should be, okay, this department, no, is responsible for acquiring the inventories at the right price and with the correct type and the correct quality. Okay. Now, that will be documented. Syempre, yung purchasing transaction. Okay. And then, the receiving department naman will check that what was actually purchased is what was actually delivered. Now, when I say what, I'm not just talking about the type of inventory. We're talking about the quality, no, the right quality, and the right quantity. Okay? And what was delivered, okay, is actually kept in the storeroom. So they are there to protect the purchases of the materials. Okay, not only to protect from theft, no, but also from spoilage and deterioration. And of course, okay, they should ensure that stocks are properly issued. Now, what happens? Now, what happens from purchasing, receiving, and storeroom should be properly recorded, no, and checked by the accounting department. Okay, so when we say check, not only the physical inventories but also no the documentary evidences, okay, coming from these different departments. Ayun lang naman. Now for Guerrero, may dinagdag siya, you have the cash department, okay. This department pays all invoices after approval, ayan, by the accounting department. Okay, so ayun, that one is self-explanatory. Syempre, bayaran lang natin kung ano yung actual na purchase. Okay, so ayun, those are the uh, most important departments, no, that we should see in our organizational structure so that we can say that merong procedures na nakaset, no, to safeguard our materials. So yan. Now, let's talk about materials purchasing procedures. The responsibility for purchasing materials is given to the purchasing agent or purchasing department. Now, they should buy the materials in, okay, correct quantities at the proper time, okay, at the lowest price. The purchasing agent's staff is part of the procurement section of the purchasing department. Siguro idagdag din natin dito, not just the time, the price, and the quantity, but also the quality. Okay, so, paki-insert na lang yan. The purchasing staff keeps informed, okay, of various sources of supply, yan, negotiates purchases, contracts, prepares purchase orders, and follows up deliveries. The routine work, pinabasa ko na lang, no? The routine work of the purchasing staff begins with the receipt of a purchase requisition. So, who makes the purchase requisition? Normally, this will come from the floor. Okay? Pag sinabi natin floor, we are referring to your factory. Okay? So, magre-request sila na, hey, we need this type of inventories or this type of materials. Okay, so that's now your requisition form. That will go to the, normally it should go to the storeroom. No, they will check if they have the materials needed by the factory. Okay, now if that is not available, then there is going the storeroom is going to make a purchase requisition slip, okay, which will be given to the purchasing department. So, sasabihin niya, hey, we need these materials or these materials is needed by the factory. Okay, so, once that is given, no, the purchase order is given to the purchase department, papa-approve natin yan, okay, dun sa treasurer, ganun. Siyempre, i-check din yan ng accountant. Once approved, then, the purchasing department can now make the purchase. Okay, so, ganun po yung kwento niyan. One of the most important things that you have to consider, no, in purchasing materials is the question, when are you going to make the purchase? Ayan. Normally, this question is answered by the reorder point. Okay, so we should know how to compute for the reorder point. Okay, so what are the things to consider? The frequency at which the materials are used, and then you have the length of time it takes for the materials to be delivered. This is known as your lead time. And then you have the minimum level of materials that should be maintained. This is also known as your safety stock. So ulitin natin, you have the frequency, the lead time, okay, and then you have the safety stock. Safety stock, parang buffer natin yan. This is the minimum level of inventory that you want to maintain at any point in time. Okay? Your lead time naman, okay, this is how long your order will arrive from the time of delivery. Diba? Parang sa Lazada, no? When you order an item, okay, sasabihin, will arrive 3 to 5 days. So, 3 is the normal lead time. 5 will be your maximum lead time. Pag minsan, may mga suppliers na sasabihin, delivery will be after 10 days. So, that is now your lead time. Okay? So, let's have an example. No? Let's assume that you have a company. You have Storm Designs. O, yan. Okay? With a reorder point of 400 gallons. Paano na-compute yung 400 gallons? They considered, sabi niya, 100 gallons at all times. Okay, so this is now your safety stock. Also, sabi, 50 gallons are used in production each day. So this is now the usage, no? Usage. Okay, 50 gallons per day, and it takes 6 days to receive an order. So this is now your lead time. So we can now compute for the reorder point. Okay, so from the time of order up to the point of delivery, okay, it will take you 6 days, and for each day you will be using 50 gallons. So, okay, from the time you will order at up to the time of delivery, you will be needing 300 gallons. Now, once this 300 gallons is consumed, then the delivery will arrive. So, just in case lang something happened, no? Something happened. Let's say that the maximum lead time is 8 days. So, there will be an allowance for 2 days, no? So, that is now your safety stock. Ayan. Normally, that is where you base your safety stock. Okay, the difference in the maximum lead time, which is 8 days, minus your normal lead time, which is 6 days, and then you multiply that by your lead time usage. Okay, and what is your lead time usage? You now have 50. Yan, 50 gallons or 50 cans. Okay, so you now have 100. Kulang yung information kasi dito. But there are other ways on how to compute for your safety stock. I'm going to discuss that later, no? So if an order is processed as expected within 6 days, the gallons of paint should arrive at Storm Designs as the inventory reaches the safety stock of 100. Even if the order is delayed, there will still be a 100 gallons on hand to meet production requirements. Yeah, so if you try to draw that, no? Kunyari, ito, without safety stock, kunyari, ito ay 0 yan. Ayan, kunyari 0. And then, nag-order ka, so darating siya. Yan yung in-order mo. Okay. Tapos, gamit. So, we're using the inventories. Okay. And then, what's this? This is now your reorder point. Okay. Okay. Your reorder point, okay, is based on your lead time usage. So, from this point to this point, this is 6 days. Okay. For Storm Designs. Each day, you are going to use 50. So, 50 times 6, you will have 300. This is now 300 units. So, kapag naging 300 units yan, order ka na. No, pag naubos yung 300 units mo, after 6 days, that's the time, okay? That's the time your, ano bang nangyari dito? Escape tayo. That's the time, ba't siya umatras? Saglit lang. Hindi na ako magpo-pause dahil ayaw ko ring mag-edit. Ayan. Ayun. Okay, so pag naubos mo na yung 300, that's the time. No, that's the time that your purchase will arrive. Okay? So, balik-balik tayo. Ayan. Ano pa ba yung mga kailangan nating malaman dito? Darating na naman siya. Gamit, gamit, gamit. Pagdating ng 300, tara! Purchase ka na, place an order. Darating yung order mo kapag naubos na. Okay. Sir, paano kapag may safety stock? Then this one is not zero if you have a safety stock. Okay, so let's try to... Okay, ayaw niya ma-erase. Napapahiya na ako. Okay, pag safety stock, ayan, ito ang zero mo, tapos ito yung 100. Okay. There you go. So, just in case it did not arrive after 6 days, you still have safety stock, no? Which is good for 2 days, yung 100 na yan. Okay, after that, your order will now arrive. Okay? Pero syempre, bitin na. So, next time, you order more for your safety stock so that it will be restored to 100. So, that's the use of your safety stock. Okay. So, let's review. If the question is, when are you going to place an order? The answer will be reorder point. So, that is now your reorder point. If the question is, how much are you going to order? Okay, how much are you going to order? The answer is now economic order quantity. The economic order quantity is the level of inventory, no, or the amount of inventory in quantity, of course, that you are going to purchase so that you'll be able to minimize your inventoriable cost or additional inventory cost. So what are these costs? You have your ordering cost and you have your carrying cost. Your ordering cost is more like a fixed cost, no? Parang fixed cost yan. Ilagay natin. Na-discuss na natin kung ano yung fixed cost, no? That it's not affected by the number of units. Like for example, eto na lang, communication cost. And let's try to simplify that. Let's assume that you order. Okay, you order using the text message. Yan, para mas madali. Okay, and one text message is 1 peso. So whether you order, let's say, 10 units or 10,000 units, if you text that to your supplier, you will pay 1 peso per order. Okay, so that's the nature of ordering cost. Ayan. For carrying cost naman, they are more like variable costs, no? They are affected by the number of units of our inventories, no? Kung ilan yung mini-maintain natin. Like for example, you have your handling and storage, no? Example for handling and storage, let's say refrigeration cost. Okay, so ayan, that's handling and storage. Interest, insurance, sir, bakit kasama yung interest? Okay, one of your handling costs or one of your carrying costs is, ano ba? How do I simplify this? Sometimes we don't use carrying cost. Instead, we use opportunity cost. Opportunity cost. Okay. Ayan. Cost or benefits. Ayan. Benefits that are foregone by choosing another alternative. So, your money, no, instead of putting that in the bank, okay, for time deposit. Kunyari, in-invest mo na lang sana, pero hindi. You decided to use that money to buy inventories and store them. Therefore, the profits that you should have been receiving or earning, no, from your investment is now foregone. That is now an opportunity cost, and that is part of your carrying cost. Okay po? So, ayun. What else? If you try to draw, no, your costs, you have here your total cost. Okay, ano total cost yan? Okay, the total cost is composed of the cost of your inventory. Okay, so this one. Ito yung pinapurchase natin, kung magkano yung bili natin sa inventory. And then you add your ordering cost and your holding cost. Now, if you notice, your ordering cost, no, is decreasing at a decreasing rate. Okay, as the quantity goes up. Okay? Why? Because this is a fixed cost. Diba? So, parang kanyan, parang unlitex. Okay, yung example natin nun. Habang mas marami kang tinetext, bumababa yung cost per text natin kasi naka-fix na siya. Your holding cost is variable in nature, so you will notice that the cost will be increasing as the order quantity is also increasing. Okay, so ayun. Sir, bakit ganun? Kasi the more you order, the higher will be your inventory that you're going to maintain. Okay, so ganun siya. So if you add the 3, you will now get your total cost. Now, what is this? The point where the holding cost intersects with the ordering cost. Ayan. This point right here is actually where your total cost is at its lowest. Ayan. Therefore, the quantity right here should be the quantity that we are purchasing. Okay? Bakit? Diba? We'd like to minimize our cost. So, kung ang tanong ngayon ay, how many units are we going to purchase? That will be answered by this one. This is now your economic order quantity. Okay, buying below the economic order quantity or higher than your EOQ will result to higher inventory cost. It may result to lower, kunyari dito, buying above the EOQ may result to lower ordering cost, but it will result to higher holding cost. Okay, and overall, the cost will be higher than this one. Okay, so ganun din dito. No? If you buy a quantity lower than EOQ, it may result to lower holding cost, but it will result to higher ordering cost. Okay? And in total, it will result to a total cost. Ayun. Now, this is one of the limitations of EOQ. No? Although it can be computed, what is the exact EOQ, sometimes acquisitions cannot be done exactly at EOQ. Okay? So for example, you computed EOQ, no? Okay, I'll show you an example later. But for example, you apply the formula, you're able to arrive at an EOQ of let's say 150 units. Ayan, kunyari 150 units. Kaya nga lang, if you're going to buy, okay, the supplier will only allow you to buy at 100 or at 200. Oh, ayan, kailangan divisible lang siya by 100. So you cannot acquire this. So what are you going to do? You compute for the total cost at 100, and then you compute for the total cost at 200. Now you can decide which of these two will result to a lower total cost. That will now be your purchase quantity. Okay? So ayun. Now let's continue. The goal of EOQ is to minimize your overall cost. Ayun lang. This is now the formula for your total annual cost. Ayan. Okay, you add the annual purchase cost. Ito po yung cost ng inventory po natin. This one. Okay. This is now your ordering cost. And then you now have your holding cost. In some books, they don't include this because it's not the total annual cost. No, it's just asking for total inventoriable cost. In addition to the cost of the inventory. So, pag ganyan, pag minsan, ang tinatanong lang nila ay itong dalawa. So, you have your tick, tack, and ayun. Tick, tack, and talk. Okay, total annual carrying cost plus total annual ordering cost. Okay, so feel free to pause the video and take a screenshot, no, para malaman niyo yung mga yan. Okay, so this is the formula. Now let me just explain. Okay, D times C, that's the demand times the cost per unit. Okay, D divided by Q, you have the demand divided by order quantity, and in this case, if you're applying the EOQ, this will be your economic order quantity. So if this is your total demand in units divided by the order size, you will get the number of orders. So for example, in 1 year, you will be using, let's say, 100,000 gallons. And every order, let's say your EOQ is 1,000. So 100,000 divided by 1,000, you will have 100. So, you will order 100 times in a year. So, you multiply that by S, the cost of placing an order. And that's your total annual ordering cost. And then your holding cost or carrying cost is Q, if you're using EOQ or do you have EOQ, divided by 2, okay, times is your annual holding cost. So, sir, bakit divide by 2? May origin kasi yan, okay? Let me explain. To compute for the average inventory, the simple average is computed by adding the beginning balance plus the ending balance divided by 2. Okay, and in this case, if the ending balance is, let's say, 0, kasi nagamit mo na siya, and the beginning balance will be equal to your EOQ, or pagbalik na rin mo yan, di ba? So, 0 na siya. So, it's as good as EOQ divided by 2. Okay, so this is actually your average inventory times your annual holding cost. Now, if you are holding a, let's say, safety stock, medyo magbabago ito. Because you have EOQ, okay, EOQ, okay, plus yung safety stock, plus safety stock. Bakit ganun? Because this is your ending balance, and this is your beginning balance, safety stock plus your EOQ, right? And then you divide that by 2. Ayan. That's why in some books, this is further simplified. No? This is further simplified as EOQ plus safety stock times 2 divided by 2. Okay, so, ayun. Or, EOQ divided by 2 plus safety stock. So, importante alam niyo yung yung origin ng formula na yan para kahit na anong gawin yung approach, kaya mako-compute nyo yung formula for average inventory times the annual holding cost. Okay? Or the holding cost per unit to get your annual holding cost. Okay, so formula for total annual cost, that's your TC plus DC and then plus stock plus stock. Pag inventoriable lang, okay, ibig sabihin on top of our inventory cost, you have tick-tack-tock. Okay, so let's continue. This is now the formula. Okay, let's try to apply the formula. Okay, sige, let's screenshot or pause, screenshot. Okay, take some notes and then let's compute. This is now the problem. Assuming you have the following: your annual demand at 1,000 units, days per year. Okay, considered in average daily demand, it's 365. Okay. Siyempre, this is under the assumption that you will be operating for 365 days. But there will be problems na you'll be given 300 days lang. You just follow the problem. So, bakit 300 days lang in a year? Well, siguro they don't work during weekends and then there are some holidays. So, their number of operating days in a year will end up to 300. Okay, so yun. The cost to place an order is 10, holding cost per unit is 2.5, lead time will be 7 days, and the cost per unit is 15. So the requirement is determine the economic order quantity and the reorder point. Let's start with the EOQ. Okay, so paano ba to? Okay, EOQ is now is equal to the square root of 2 times D, sa akin to do C Ayan. 2 times the annual demand times your ordering cost, okay, and divided by your carrying cost or holding cost. Sige, sundan natin yung formula. Okay, so paano ba to? So you have 2 times, what's the annual demand? You have 1,000 times 10. Okay. Kunyari, magkatabi tayo at chinututor lang kita. So, divided by 2.5. Okay. So, get your calculator. I-pause mo muna tong video. Get the calculator and then compute. Kunyari, na-compute mo na. What do you get? Your economic order quantity is now... na-compute ko na to kanina. It's around 89 point something. Asa na ba yung computation ko? Ayun. Okay. I found my código. It's 89.443. Okay, parang ganun. Or 90. Ayan. So you have to round that up most of the time. Okay? Bakit? Okay? Baka hindi ka pwedeng makabili ng 0.43. Okay? Depending on your product. No? For example, let's say we're talking about cell phones. Ganon, you cannot buy 89 cell phones and one battery. Okay, so yung mga ganun. If we're talking about bicycles, you cannot buy 89 bicycles and 2 tires. Okay, so most of the time you round them up. So why don't we just round them down? Mas malapit naman siya sa 89. If you round them down, you may not be able to satisfy the demand, no, for production. Okay, so ayun. So you should purchase around 90. Okay. Now, if you are allowed to purchase at 89 naman pala, o di sige, i-check mo. Okay? What will result to a lower total inventory cost? Will it be 89 or 90? Okay, so yun. Pwede. Anyway, let's continue. Another requirement is the reorder point. So, to compute for the reorder point, okay, so your reorder point, this is actually equal to your average demand, no, average lead time usage in some books. Okay, so sa atin, we'll just use this symbol. This is the demand per day, okay, and then we multiply that by the lead time. Ayan. Okay, so what is our average? So if in a year, dito na lang tayo. If in 1 year we have 1,000, we divided by 365, that's now your average daily, di ba? Paano ba to? Na-compute ko na rin to kanina. This is 2.74 units per day. Okay. And then we multiply that by your lead time usage, which is 7. So, ilagay natin dito. You have 2.74. Okay, we multiply this by 7 and you will get something like 19.18, or you round it up to 20 units. Okay. Hindi naman to financial accounting na kailangan exact, ano. Okay, take note, this is just a guide for decision making. Okay, so when are you going to purchase? Okay, if your quantity is at 20 units, you place an order, okay, when your quantity is just 20 units, and then if the question is how many units are you going to order, you're going to order 90 units. Okay, so this one is for the quantity, this is for the time. Okay, so yan po yung gamit ng economic order quantity. So sir, what about your safety stock? Okay, so if you have a safety stock, your reorder point will now be the average, no, times your lead time, so your reorder point plus your safety stock. And there are different ways on how you can compute for your safety stock. Most of the time, your safety stock will be based on the fluctuation of your lead time. So if safety stock is based on lead time, we simply compare, no, your maximum lead time minus your normal lead time. So what's maximum and normal? Normal, yung normal na lead time. Well, from the date of order up to the time, no, your order will arrive. And then sometimes, ayan, they don't arrive on time. Okay, so you now get your maximum lead time. Okay, ito yung sinasabi ng supplier pag minsan na normally we can deliver it in 6 days, but if there are, let's say, typhoons or because of the pandemic, okay, most of the time, okay, ang latest na will be 8 days. So that's now your maximum lead time. Okay, so the difference of the maximum and your normal lead time, you multiply that by your lead time usage or average daily usage. Okay, Sometimes, no, sometimes your safety stock can be based on the change in the demand, no, change in the demand. Okay, so how do you compute for that? You have your maximum demand for your product, and then you deduct the normal demand for your product. Yung daily lang, yung daily usage. Let's say normally, no, normally you use 2.74, but sometimes because of the demand in the product, you use 5, no? 5 units of your raw material. So that's now your maximum. Oh, ayan. So just in case lang mag-fluctuate, then you have a provision for your safety stock. And then you multiply that by your normal lead time. Sir, can we maintain the two? Yes, okay. You can have this as your safety stock. You can have this as your safety stock. You can have the total of the two as your safety stock. Okay, so just in case the demand will fluctuate, okay, or the usage will fluctuate, okay, may safety stock ka dyan. Or what if sabay silang nag-fluctuate? You can add this and that. And another one is the safety stock based on the difference and the usage and the difference in the lead time. Okay, so ano to? Bakit meron kang ganyan? Okay, this is the safety stock that you need when, let's say, your deliveries, the deliveries were delayed and the usage fluctuated. So, paano to? This is simply the difference of your lead time. Okay, ano yan? Okay, I will explain later. Times the difference in your demand. Okay, so saan po galing yung difference in the demand? Siya po ito. Maximum minus the normal. Saan po nagaling yung difference in lead time? Siya naman po yan. Maximum lead time minus your normal lead time. Okay, so kunyari naiintindihan natin yun. Now, what else? Let's continue. Other methods, you have the bin system. No? Your 2-bin system is very easy to follow. So you maintain 2 bins, not necessarily at the same size, no? Okay? Pag minsan you have one that is bigger, okay, mas malaki kunyari ito. This one is bigger and this one is smaller. Okay? Now, paano to? If this bin is empty, pag wala na, that's the time for you to purchase. Okay, and while your purchase did not yet arrive, okay, you have the smaller bin, no? This is equal to your lead time usage. So nagagamit yan, bumababa. Yan. At the time, no, at the time that this is already used, okay, that's the time that your order will arrive. So you will order for 2 bins, no? Your reorder point is when 1 bin is empty, you order. Okay, and it will arrive when the smaller bin is already consumed. Sometimes you can have let's say a red line approach. Ano yung red line approach? Okay, if you want to maintain a safety stock. So this one should always be full. Ito na ngayon yung lead time usage natin. Sometimes they have 3 bins, no? So what's the third bin? Okay. This is your safety stock. Ayan. So, if this one now is empty, you now order for 2 bins. Okay. And normally, they will arrive. Okay. These 2 bins will arrive when the first and second bin is already empty. Just in case it will not arrive on time, you still have your safety stock. Now, if you have your 1 bin system, okay, you regularly check this, no? And then, may safety stock ka dyan normally. Ganyan. Ayan. So, you will just order enough to refill the bin. Okay, sir, what about the reorder point? Sometimes you can have 1 line, kunyari. Ayan. You can have this as your, ganyan na lang. Reorder point. Ayan. You order, pwede rin, no? You order once it arrived at this line right here, and then, darating siya kapag nandito na. So, pag hindi siya dumating on time, you still have your safety stock right there. Okay, so those are your bin system. And then, this bin system can also be translated into other methods. Like, For example, instead of bins, okay, you have warehouses or storage or boxes. Pag minsan area lang, no, for the warehouse, meron kang floor area na ganyan. Okay, so meron silang ilalagay na tape or parang boundary. No, kunyari, warehouse tayo ng mga um, soft drinks. Ayan, so may mga cases ng soft drinks dito. Once na naubos yung mga soft drinks dito, that's the time we are going to order. And the soft drinks that are stored on this area will be equal to your lead time usage. Okay, so ayun lang. Now, talking about inventory management and controls, okay, hindi natin maiiwasan din yung discussion on inventory costing system. Now, there are different types, okay. For the purpose of our discussion, we will just talk about first in, first out, last in, first out, and then you have the moving average method. Okay, so paano ba to? Okay, let's have an example. When we say first in, first out, ito. Okay, when we say first in, first out, your cost of goods sold, okay, will come from the earlier purchases, and then the ending balance of your inventory will come from your later purchases. Okay, for last in, first out, your cost of goods sold, last in, first out. So, they will come from your later purchases, while the ending balance of your inventory will come from your earlier purchases. So, yan, let's pretend that I have the best handwriting na lang. Okay po? So, ayun, I'll discuss moving average later, but let's have an example for FIFO and LIFO muna. Okay, so, paano ba to? Let's say, let's just use white para hindi kayo malito. Let's say we have 4 purchases. So, let's write down FIFO. We have 4 purchases. This is purchase number 1, purchase number 2, purchase number 3, and guess what? Correct. Tama yung iniisip mo. Purchase number 4. Yan. Okay, using FIFO, let's assume that one inventory, take note, this is just a costing method, no? It doesn't really follow that the physical inventory will also move that way. Syempre, customer is always right, no? If the customer wants to purchase the freshest inventory, okay, or if you're into manufacturing, you want to use the freshest and the latest materials, okay, we cannot stop you from doing that. But in costing your cost of goods sold and inventories, okay, pwede kang gumamit ng FIFO. And using FIFO, okay, we assume that yung nabenta or yung nagamit will come from your earlier purchases. Okay, so that's your first in, first out. Tama ba? Cost of goods sold will come from earlier purchases. So, let's assume that you were able to sell, okay, you were able to sell 3 units. So, your ending inventory, ano yung nangyari doon? So, your ending inventory now is 1 unit. Okay, so using first in, first out, ito po yung cost of goods sold natin. And using first in, first out, this will be the ending inventory. So let's just assume that the cost is 100, 200, 300, and 400. So how much is your cost of goods sold? You now have 600 pesos. What's now the ending inventory? You now have 400 pesos. Okay, di ba? So for first in, first out, ayan, you will notice that the ending balance, no? Okay, this one will be found in your balance sheet. It will be reflected, no? Your inventories in your balance sheet will be reflected at the latest, the most updated price. Okay. Ngayon, doon sa last in, first out, pagtabihin na nga muna natin. Last in, first out. Let's have the same, let's have the same number of purchases. Okay, so let's say 4 units lang tayo, 4 units. Purchase number 1, 2, 3, and number 4. Let's assume that their price is 100, 200, 300, and 400. Ayan. Tapos, same assumption. Okay, they were able to sell. So, they sold 3 units. Okay, and then the ending balance is now 1 unit. Okay. So, last in, first out, 3 units. So, we assume that this is your cost of goods sold. Okay, so what's the value for your cost of goods sold? You now have 2 plus 3 plus 4. So, you have 9. Bakit ayaw? Ayaw sumunod ng kamay ko. You have 900 pesos. Okay. And what is your ending balance? Yung hindi na ibenta, that is now 100 pesos. Dito naman sa last in, first out, you will notice that the ending inventory, which will go to your balance sheet, which will go to your balance sheet, will be reflected at the earliest price. So this is the this is the disadvantage of using last in, first out. Your inventories in the balance sheet may not be as updated as using first in, first out. But take note, okay, for last in, first out, mas updated naman yung cost of goods sold mo as compared to first in, first out. Okay, and in the times of rising prices, this will result to a lower net income. Mas conservative siya as compared to first in, first out. Okay, at times of rising prices, we expect that cost of goods sold will be lower, therefore resulting to a higher profit. Okay, so ayun, most of the time ginagamit natin ang first in, first out. Okay, parang balita ko wala na yata yung last in, first out. Anyway, more discussion on first in, first out and last in, first out when you go to your financial accounting 1. Now, let's talk about your moving average. Balik na tayo. Your moving average method is actually a method in valuing your inventory. Okay, wherein the average cost is computed every time a purchase is made. Therefore, we cannot use this using the periodic inventory system, Kasi every time a purchase is made, sabi niya, therefore, you have to have a complete what you call this, records for your inventories. Okay, alam mo kung ilan yung running inventories mo as of this date, okay, what is the running cost or balance so that you can compute for your average unit cost. Okay, let's have an example. Nawala na. Let me just draw na lang. Drawing kunyari. Isipin mo na lang na blackboard ito at miss mo nang manood ng blackboard. Let's say we have this example, date. Okay, you have the date. Ano pa ba? You have the quantity and then you have the unit cost. What else? So you have the total cost. Now let me just write the balance. Normally, pag may total na, we don't put the balance na. Pero for the purpose of discussion, I'm going to write the balance here so that you will understand it better. It's easier for me to simplify pag magkaiba yan. Makikita nyo mamaya. And then you have the, ano pa ba? Total units. Yeah. Total units. Ito yung balance niya. And then, you have the unit cost. For this example, we're going to assume that there are no sales. Instead, puro purchases lang. Okay, so puro purchases lang. So, example number 1, let's try to use yellow. Let's say that for the beginning balance, you have 1,400 500 units with a unit cost of 5. So what's the total? 1.5 times 5, 1.5 times 5, that will be 75. Ayan, pakicheck na lang yung mga may calculator. Okay, so the balance is 75. This one is in pesos. Total number of units, we have 1,500. So if you try to divide your unit cost, you have 5. Yeah. Okay, so you have 5 per unit. Sir, niloloko mo naman kami, binalibaliktad mo lang. Okay. Makikita nyo mamaya. Eto na, let's say that in February 10, sulat natin. February 10, nag-purchase tayo ng, let's say, purchase of 300. O sige, 300 at a unit cost of 2. So, 300 times 2, that will now be 600. Okay. So, ano na yung balance natin? 7,500 plus 600. This will now become 8,100. So, that is now the cost, no? So, how many units do we have? We now have 1,000. So, you have 1,500 plus 300. So, you have 1,800 units. Now, if you divide, no, your total balance, 8,100, sabi niya kasi every time you make a purchase, the average cost will be computed because the purchases will affect the unit cost, not the sales. Okay, pero tingnan natin mamaya. 81 divided by 1,800, you will get 4 point, where's my calculator? Parang 4.5 yan. Okay? Ito problema kapag hindi handa. Ay nako. Mag-break muna kayo at inahanap ko yung ayon. Okay, my calculator na. Okay, so let me just compute. I'm just winging this, so don't expect me to pause, no? Pag may mali, i-correct ko na lang, okay? Anyway, so we have the balance of 8,100, which came from 7,500 plus 600. Tama, no? 8,1. So you have 8,100, divide that by 1,800. Siyempre, uulitin ko. Tama. So, it's 4.5 per unit. Yan, bumabagal na ako mag-compute. You know, sign of aging. And then, let's say that in February 20 na naman. After 10 days, bumili na naman sila ng 500 units. Okay, and let's say that per unit, this one was acquired at 8. So, 8 times 500, this will now be 4,000, no? This is 40, dalawang zero, so you have 4,000. So, what is now the balance? 8,100 plus 4,000, you now have 12,100 as the value of your inventory. Anyway, ilagay ko pa dito pesos para alam natin na pesos yan. Okay. So, how many units do we have? 1,800 plus 500, you now have 2,300. And let's compute that. 12,000, dapat kinumpute ko na to kanina. 12,100 divided by 2,300 units. So, yikes. Pangit. Okay, may butal siya. 5.26087, sabihin mo. O, 2.26 na lang. Hindi, lagay na lang natin. 2.60879 something and so on and so forth. Okay. So, you will see that the beginning balance, okay, will have a value of 5, and then the ending balance, no, will have a value of 5.26. Now, take note, this is the example when there are no sales. Okay, so that's how you compute for the unit cost. Now, what if nininervous ako kasi ginagawa ko lang siya ngayon. What if we have the following So, ilagay pa rin natin date, quantity, unit cost. Ngayon kung nalilito kayo, please feel free to pause. Okay, and then pause and have a few moments to, internalize. Okay, pag naintindihan mo na, you can proceed with this discussion or with this example. You have the balance, you now have your total units. Naglalag na siya. Then you have your unit cost. Wala na, bagal na ang laptop natin. So, ulitin natin, you have the beginning balance. Okay. Oops. Sige, gamitin natin ng yellow ulit. You have the beginning balance at 1,500. A unit cost of 5. So, you have 7,500. And then, syempre, beginning balance yan. O di 7,500. 1,500, and you now have 5 as the unit cost. Now, let's assume that you were able to sell. O magbenta nga tayo, let's say February 10. February 5 na lang. Para mas maaga kaysa sa February 10, no? So, bago tayo nag-purchase ng February 10, we sold something on February 5, okay? Let's say we were able to sell 250. What's the cost of this? Siyempre, 5 pa rin. 5 pa rin. Siya pa rin yun, no? So, the total cost of what you sold is 250 times 5, 1,000, 1,250. 1,250. So, let's just put minus. Okay? Para mas madaling intindihin. So, what is now your balance? This is now 6,000. Tama ba? 6,250. And the total units will be 1,500 minus 250. That will be 1,250. What is the cost? It will still be at 5. Take note, it's not affected by sales. Okay, now let's compute. What if there is now ilagay natin. There is now a purchase, okay, on February 10, okay, at 300 at a cost of 2. Okay, so 300 times 2, this will be 600. Okay, so we add that. This will become 6,850. Okay. So, how many units do we have? If we have, magkano ba? 1,250 units earlier, and then we purchased 300, you now have 1,550. Okay, so what is now the cost? O di, i-divide lang natin, no? 6,250, the balance, divided by the number of units, na 1,550. Yak, tama ba to? Ulitin nga natin, parang mali. 6,850. We divide this by 1,550. Talagang ganun siya. Okay. 4.419. 4.419. So that's now the unit cost. Let's say before the purchase of February 20, there was a sale. Let's say February 12 na lang. Gawin natin blue. February 12. Ayan. We were able to sell 200 units. Okay, so what is now 200 units? Saan nang galing yan? Dito. So the cost will be 4.419. Okay, so if you multiply that, napasubo yata ako times 200. It's 800. It's 883 point, ano ba to? 871 na lang. 871. Okay, so what is now the balance? You add that to 6,000. I know, it's a sale, no? So you deduct that from 6,850. You will get pangit naman. Pero ito lumabas, paki-calculator na lang, 5,966.129 or 0.13. So we divide this, no, the balance of our inventory, by the balance of our inventory in units. So 1550, you sold 200 units, so that's now 1,300. Tara! Tama ba? 1,350. And of course, this is your sale, so it's not affected, no? It's 4.419. All right. So now let's purchase. Okay, let's have the same purchase on February 20. Okay, we purchased 500. Okay, add a unit cost of 8. So 500 times 8, that will now be 4,000. Okay, and then we add that to your balance, 4,000. That will become 9,966.129. And so on and so forth. Or 0.13, sabihin mo na lang. Okay, and then we divide it by the number of units. So you have 1,350 plus 500, we now have 1,850. 1,850 units. So if you divide that, you will get a unit cost of kunyari, nag-compute din kayo kahit na hinihintay nyo lang video naman, di ba? Okay. Kung classroom ito, hihintayin ko kayo mag-compute. 7 something. Okay. So as you can see, no, may effect din naman pala yung sales. Okay? But we only compute, no, or no, the unit cost will only change, okay, if there are purchases. Oh, yeah. So you see, we have the same purchases, same quantity, same unit cost. Okay? Pero dito, bakit nagkaiba na siya? Okay. It's because of your sales. So, ayan. So, that's how you value your inventory. So, for example, you are asked to compute what is now your cost of goods sold, no? And what is your ending inventory? This is the value of our ending inventory. Okay? Asan na? Ayun. This is the value of your ending inventory. Ending balance. Okay, so what about your cost of goods sold? Your cost of goods sold will be the total of this one and that one. So that's now your cost of goods sold. Okay po, so that's how you apply your moving average. Okay, this can only be done using your perpetual inventory system. Okay po, so ayun, now let's continue. What about the lower of cost or net realizable value, also known as NCM, no, LCM in some books, lower of cost or market, but that there will be a different discussion for that in financial accounting. Sa ngayon, we'll just use your net realizable value. Now for PAS number 2, no, it requires us to measure inventories at lower of cost, or dapat yata yan net realizable value. So, in short, you just compare, no, what's the cost of this inventory, what's the net realizable value, what is lower, then that should be the amount of the inventory reflected in our financial statements. Okay, so if net realizable value is lower than the cost, we value it at NRV, and then vice versa. So what is now your net realizable value? The net realizable value is actually the selling price less your cost to sell or cost of completion. Okay, so let's say that your inventory can be sold, let's say, at 100 pesos, but you have to incur, let's say, 10 pesos as your selling price, siguro, for commission, ganun, no? And then, additional packaging of this, no? Of your product para sa cost of completion. Okay. So, ayun, that's now the market value, kumbaga. That's why in some books, it's lower of cost or market value. Now, the differences can be adjusted, no, against your inventories and close to cost of goods sold. That's the first method, no? Markahan nga natin. First method is you adjust the inventories and then the difference will go to your cost of goods sold, okay? And then the second method, okay, the difference will be your gain or loss, and then there is your accumulated gain or loss or accumulated adjustment, okay, in your inventory. That is more like a valuation account, no? Parang allowance for inventory adjustment, parang ganun, okay? And then it can be applied per item or on an aggregate basis. Let's have an example. Kunyari, ito na naman po tayo sa example na to. How do I simplify this? Ganito na lang. Let's say we have the following items. No? You have two inventory, inventory A and inventory B. And then let's assume, no, let's have 100 units for A and you have 200 units for B. Ganyan na lang para madali yung mathematics. And then you have the unit cost. Okay. Cost per unit. Let's say that this is 100 and this one is 150. Okay. So, your total cost for your inventory is 100 times 100. You have 100. Okay, or 10,000. Okay. 200 times 150, that will be 30,000. Okay, so ayun. What's the net realizable value per unit? Okay, let's say that the net realizable value per unit here is 100 and this one is 120. Okay, so therefore, what will be the basis? Now, if we are using per unit, okay, so we are going to get whichever is lower, diba? So, dito, this is the cost. And, ay, alam ko na, nagkapareho eh. Di wala palang problema pag pareho, no? Gawin na lang natin 110, ayun. So, the basis, whichever is lower, diba? Here we are going to use the cost. And here we're going to use the net realizable value. Okay, so why cost? Because the cost is lower as compared to your net realizable value. Why net realizable value? Because the net realizable value is lower than the cost. So, if that's the case, okay, your lower of cost or net realizable value will now be 100 times 100. Can you now have 10,000? And 120 times 200, that will now be 24,000 for a total of 34,000 pesos. This is now the value of your inventory. Okay, so pag i-compare mo, dito the value is 40,000. Yan. So you have to make an adjustment. What is now our adjustment? Our adjustment is now equal to 40 minus 34. You will now have 6. Yan. You will now have 6,000. So kanina, pag binalikan natin, sabi, it can be adjusted against inventories and close to cost of goods sold. Okay. So now the difference of 6,000 can be allocated, no, to your inventories, okay, inventory A and inventory B. Okay? Pero dahil nag-item per item ka na, mas maganda kung yung adjustment mo na lang ay manggagaling dito. Ayan, manggagaling dito sa item per item din. So it appears that the adjustment, okay, came from item B, 30 and 24. Yun. So, you can have item per item na adjustment, pero for the purpose of our discussion, you can just make one adjustment to your, or aggregate adjustment to your inventories. That will be a debit to cost of goods sold 6,000 and credit to your inventories amounting to 6,000. In some books, okay, they use a loss on the revaluation of inventories, pwede rin, or sometimes they just go directly to your profit and loss, okay, because a loss in the inventory will decrease your net income. They have the same effects naman, okay. If you increase your cost of goods sold, this will also decrease your net income. Or if you debit profit and loss, that will also decrease your net income. Okay, so ayun. Another approach here is, gaya ng sinabi natin kanina, okay, you can use gain or loss and then record accumulated gain or loss, okay, or unrealized gain or loss, or pag minsan ginagamit lang natin accumulated adjustment on inventory, which is a valuation account. Okay, so how do you do that? Okay, you now have loss on inventory valuation amounting to 6K, and then you have accumulated valuation in your inventory, or unrealized adjustment in inventories, or accumulated adjustment in inventories. Basta this will be deducted, no, against your inventory cost, which is presented in the balance sheet. Pwede rin naman yon. Okay, now if this one is recovered, okay, you will have a debit to, kunyari nag-reverse ka, although in some books, no, reversal of what was written off is not allowed. Okay, so may mga exemptions tayo doon, and that will be discussed in your financial accounting. But for the purpose of inventory valuation here in cost accounting, if you want to recover that, you simply debit accumulated valuation on inventory and then credit, okay, gain on inventory valuation. Kunyari tumaas siya. Ayan. There is a more detailed discussion on recoveries of write-downs, okay, and that will be in financial accounting. Anyway, this is your LCM, no, lower of cost or net realizable value applied on a per unit basis. Okay, so what if ganyan natin? What if aggregate naman tayo? So you have item. Ang ganda talaga ng sulat ko. Okay, you have the quantity, you have the cost per unit. Okay, you have your total. And then you have your NRV. Okay, let's pretend that we're still enjoying this. Alright, ang saya-saya naman kunyari. Okay, and then you have the lower of cost or net realizable value. Okay, so we have two items, item A, item B. Okay, tapos ang quantity natin ay, we have 100, this one is 200, okay, and the cost of this is 100, this one is 150, okay, tapos our total cost now is 10,000, okay, this one is 30,000 for a total of 40,000. Net realizable value is 110. Tama. And ito ay 120. So, ano na yung NRV natin dito? Per total. Siguro tanggalin pala natin ito. Instead of basis, let's just use NRV. Okay, so if that is valued on 110 times 100, you'll get 11,000, and 120 times 200, that will be 24,000. So pag total, we're just going to compare the total inventory at cost and total inventory, no, at net realizable value. In this case, it's 35. So which is lower, the cost or the net realizable value? In this case, this one is still lower. Now, if you try to compare, no, okay, eto, 34,000 dito, and then this one is 35,000. So, sir, which one is correct? They're both correct. No, it's just that this one is applied on a per item basis. This one is on the total. Okay, now if you want to be conservative, this one is better. Okay, it's more conservative, but this one is more convenient. Okay, so they are both allowed. Okay, so ayun. Ano pa ba yung mga kailangan nating malaman dito? Let's talk about freight in. Okay, most of the time, this is an addition to purchase cost. Malapit na po itong matapos, don't worry. This is an addition to purchase cost. It's added to the cost. Sometimes, okay, before being added to the cost, okay, you accumulate it in the freight in account and then you apply it to the cost. Once in a while, okay, may nakikita ako is being added to factory overhead and then there is an application rate for that. Pero for cost accounting, ang standard natin, if there are freight ins, it will be added to the purchase cost. Okay, now, the issue is when the materials are issued in work in process or in the factory. So how are you going to allocate na your freight in? Okay, you allocate that based on the value of the materials that are issued. So for example, you have material A. Let's say the cost is 10,000. Ganun na lang para madali yung mathematics natin. 10,000 and 30,000. So you now have a fraction of, so this one a total of 60,000. You now have a fraction of 1 over 6, 2 over 6. So saan nang galing yan? Okay. Dito, dapat 10,000 over 60,000, 20,000 over 60, and 30,000 over 60,000. Shortcut ko lang. So now, let's assume that your total freight in, no, let's say that your total freight in is, ano ba, kunyari, it's 90,000. Mas mahal pa yung freight in. Wait lang. Kunyari, 9,000 na lang. Ayan, so you simply multiply that, no, multiply that by the fraction. So 9,000 times 1 over 6, that will be 1,500 yata. Paki-calculator na lang. Times 2, it's 3,000. Times 3, that's 4,500. So if you issue this material A, okay, you will also have 1,500 for the freight in. Ayan. You can have the following journal entries in the acquisition of materials, debit to stores, or simply raw materials and credit accounts payable or vouchers payable or cash if it's paid in cash. Now for your freight in or debit raw materials or debit stores din, okay, and then credit cash, and then once it's issued, okay, so that's the time you debit your work in process direct materials, factory overhead control, okay, for your freight, yung i-allocate mo sa kanila. Okay, and then you have your stores. Okay, or tanggalin mo na yan. Okay, you could just debit work in process dash direct materials, which includes, okay, the cost of your material and the allocated freight in. Walang mali doon. Okay. What about handling cost? Okay, na-discuss na natin to kanina. What are handling costs, also known as carrying cost? Okay, treatment, they could be added to your factory overhead control. It's the easiest approach. Or you can add them to the materials when they are issued. Or you can add them to the materials when they are purchased. No, both. Dito, sorry. Issued and on purchase, you'll be using predetermined overhead rate. Okay, pero it's most of the time used as your predetermined materials handling cost rate. Okay, so if it's added to factory overhead control, that's my favorite. Every time you incur materials handling cost, or do you just debit factory overhead control? Okay, when you make purchases, standard, no? If you make issuance, again, you have the standard journal entries. So, ayun. Now, take note, if you try to review your factory overhead control, from your cost flows, this one is debited for the actual, and this one is credited for the applied. So, your handling cost now will be applied together with other overhead costs. Diba? So, you use your factory overhead rate. Now, if it's added to the cost when the materials are issued, you come up with an application rate. Okay, so once they are incurred, you debit materials handling cost and credit cash if it's paid in cash. When you make your purchases, you debit your stores and credit AP. Now, as of this point, I want to emphasize the major difference. If it's treated as part of factory overhead, you debit factory overhead control. If it's treated as an addition to the materials when they are issued, ilalagay mo muna siya as a separate account in your materials handling cost. So you will have your own materials handling cost account, just like factory overhead. Okay, so you debit this for the actual amount. Now you look at this, once they are issued, debit to work in process, credit stores for the materials, and credit applied materials handling cost. So you have here your applied. O di magkakaroon na naman yan ng difference. Okay, I will discuss later how you're going to treat this difference. Okay, aside from that, since there is an applied materials handling cost, we need materials handling cost application rate. I will also discuss that later. Now, what if they are added to the cost of the materials when they are purchased? So, they have the same entry when they are incurred, debit to materials handling cost and credit cash. Now, sabi, they are added to the cost when materials are purchased. So, when you record the purchase, you apply immediately the materials handling cost. Okay, so, that's one difference, Okay, this one, if you go back, it's only applied when it is issued. Okay, kaya when you acquire, it's simply a debit to stores and credit to accounts payable. But if you apply them, at the time of purchase, you debit stores and then you record applied MHC. So again, you will have a separate account for your materials handling cost. You debit your actual, and you have here your applied. Kaya magkakaroon tayo ng application rate later. Ayan, magkaiba lang yung application rate because this one is applied at the time of purchase. The earlier example, this one is applied at the time of issuance. So, siguro ngayon, you can now visualize the difference in the application rate. But then, just like this one, there will be a difference in actual and applied. So, that difference, I'm going to discuss later how you treat them. Now, let's continue. Upon issuance, you make the standard journal entry. A debit to work in process and a credit to your stores account. Okay po? So, ayun. Ano ba? So, I guess that's it. Let's talk about your application rate, sir. So, paano po namin i-compute yung applied materials handling cost? Well, it depends if it's based on purchase or based on materials issued. So, this is now your application rate. This one, if it's based, if it's based on issuance or consumption, materials issued, issuance, tama ba spelling ko ng issuance? Actually, isang square dapat yan. Yan. And this one is another computation. The application rate if it's based on purchase or it's applied, dapat yan. Burahin nga natin yung based na yan para mas maganda. Okay. Ito, if it is applied, pasensya na po at may codes ako ngayon eh. If it's applied during issuance, naka-drugs ako. Yan. I'm under medication during issuance. Hindi naman siya COVID sa awa ng Diyos. Okay, and this one is applied. Applied during purchase. Ang hirap pala magsulat. Oh, I'm so sorry. Pero hindi ko i-edit ang mga errors ko dito. Okay. Para realistic naman. Nagkakamali lang tayo. Okay? So, tada! So, you have your estimated materials handling cost divided by the estimated materials consumption or materials issuance for the period. You divide that and you will get an application rate. This is what you're going to multiply with the issuance. So, pag nag-issue ka na, let's go back dito. Pag nag-issue ka na, you multiply that with the rate that you have computed, this one, and you will get your applied materials handling cost. Same story with this one, but this one is based on purchases, no? So once you have the rate, you're going to multiply that with the acquired or the purchased materials para makuha mo ito. Okay, so ayun. And that's it, no? Additional things to remember. If you remember the difference, sabi ko kanina, because you have your actual and you have your applied, definitely you will have the difference. So how do you treat the difference? It can be close to cost of goods sold account. Okay, so if you have a credit balance, you debit that. Okay, you debit that and then credit to cost of goods sold. If it has a debit balance, ibig sabihin, mas malaki. Sige, ikwento ko na nga. Okay. Kayo talaga. So, if you have your actual, ganun na lang, which is found on your debit, okay? If that one is greater than the applied, where do you find this? In the credit side, okay? So, what is your journal entry? So, kung mas malaki yung actual, mas malaki yung debit. So, you credit that. You credit your materials handling cost and you debit your cost of goods sold. Now, if it's the opposite, mas malaki yung applied, no? Mas malaki yung credit, o do you debit materials handling cost and credit cost of goods sold. That is if we are using cost of goods sold to account for the difference of the actual and applied materials handling cost. Now, if you want to be more specific, you can prorate that with the cost of goods sold and your inventories. Okay, so you have cost of goods sold, work in process inventory, and finished goods inventory. In the same manner as how you apply, or not apply, how you allocate the over or under applied factory overhead, no? So, as a review, assuming your cost of goods sold is 5,000 and you have work in process of 2,000, you have finished goods inventory of 3,000, and your over and under applied, okay, materials handling cost is, let's say, 20,000 na lang. Para madali yung math. So, 5 plus 2 plus 3, that will be 10. O, dili lang. 5 over 10 times 20. So, you have 10,000. This one is 1,000. And this one is 6,000. Okay. Mali. 2 over 10 pala. So, 2 over 10, that will be tama ba? Bakit feeling ko mali ako dito? Saan ako nagkamali? Tayo na mabura. Ayan. This one will be okay, 4,000. So, if dito kanina, you have 20,000 and 20,000. Just an assumption, okay? Here, you will now debit cost of goods sold of 5, debit work in process of 2, and debit finished goods at 3,000. Okay, or you can close this directly to your income summary account, debit to income summary, okay? Or you can treat this as a deferred item, no? So, debit deferred item and then credit materials handling cost. Okay, so, ayun. So, sir, alin dito ang tama? Tama silang lahat, but most of the time, we use these two. We use that two. Okay, for convenience, okay, ito madalas gamitin in practice. Kung practice yan. Okay, so I guess that's it. Okay. And, ayun, so, that is our discussion. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, especially in our Canvas discussion boards. Okay. So, ano pa ba? Wait lang. After this discussion, magkakaroon kayo ng short quiz from the beginning. Okay. So, I guess that's it, and thank you very much.